Welcome, whimsical theater attendees, to Geek Salad's Retro Movie Reviews from Geek Salad Podcast. I'm Andy.
And I'm Mike.
And tonight, we begin our look at the box office blunders of the summer. We took this to our Twitter page, and we put a poll out. And the poll would dictate which order we discuss these in. So we kick off tonight with the runaway favorite to discuss this. 1993 is The Last Action Hero, but we cannot do this alone, of course. A movie this big and this bombastic absolutely needs, I need backup. I need the chief to yell at me. So, welcome back to the show, Thomas Green from the Movies After Work podcast.
Hey there, guys.
Hey, thanks for coming back.
Oh, always happy to come on.
Awesome. So before we kick off, Tom, for any newcomers to our show, let them know a little bit about Movies After Work.
Well, Movies After Work is my friend Alex and I basically decided to turn our 1 a.m. Denny strips into a podcast where we talk about movies, trailers, movie news, and the joys of parenting all wrapped up into one.
Fun. Awesome. So, yeah, great. It's a great show. Currently this month, they're taking a little hiatus, which is odd because, Tom, Space Jam is coming back.
Yeah, it is.
I'm only going to watch it just so you and I can have, like, those 4-hour Twitter just back and forth like we did with the Snyder Cut. Just, what? Why is this? And Kurt Smith has already mentioned, woohoo, Last Action Hero.
There we go.
All right, so first question we always lead off with. Tom, when was the first time you saw this movie?
I don't remember the exact age I was, but the age was not the age that watches R-rated films.
Well, fortunately for you, this is PG-13, as they made mention of.
Oh, that's right.
Because he couldn't say the word.
I always forget, yeah. It's still, even some PG-13 films, I was not allowed to watch for a span of time in my life.
Okay.
Because I was too good at quoting films. But, yeah, I probably watched this when I was probably about 10 or 11. Was the first time I watched it. And, yeah, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was hilarious. It combined so many different things that I enjoy all into one film. So
okay. So Mike, I know you just watched it last night.
I did.
As you were texting me throughout, and then later on today, I'm getting more texts, which we will suss out in a moment. I saw this opening night.
Of course you did.
1993. Yep. It was definitely the week after Jurassic Park. And you know how I know that? Because it was not hard for us to get a ticket to this movie. Which is why I think one of the larger reasons why this movie did not do well, at least financially. We can go into the critical end of it in a little bit, but financially, this movie was just doomed from the start. They had the whole thing where they had that big promotion with the blow up Schwarzenegger holding a stick of dynamite, but it coincided with the first bombing at the World Trade Center in 1993, so they had to pull that. The test screen, like the Sony test screening, was a nightmare. Like up there with like the first Star Wars, like Lucas brings all of his film school nerds to go watch the first cut of Star Wars, and they're like, "What are we watching?"
I mean, to be fair, it had a budget of $85 million. It did have a box office of 137.3.
They said that the actual cumulative loss over everything is $26 million. So this won't be the biggest box office bomb that we discussed in this 4-week period or 5-week period. We're including Interspace. God damn it, we're including it.
They did market the hell out of this movie.
Oh, you think? This is the first movie to have an advertisement for it shot into space.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's interesting going down the Wikipedia rabbit hole of the Last Action Hero. So it's one of these movies that it was a lot, and I don't know if either of you remembered the onslaught of marketing for this movie. This was boot on the throat style marketing.
Yeah.
It was everywhere. It had a fast food tie-in, which most action films don't tend to have. This one had. Is that your child, Tom?
I think that's my child.
Okay. Do you need to attend to said child?
No, I just need to turn the monitor down.
I gotcha. I kind of feel like it was everywhere. There were toys. There was the Burger King tie-in with some of the worst lenticular cups I've ever drank out of. I also remember too the Meatloaf Sandwich that was like this big tie-in to Last Action Hero. And this is back when Dan Cortese was like Mr. Extreme on MTV. And it was like, boom! Just got my tickets to see Last Action Hero. Now I'm going to sit at Burger King and eat this Meatloaf Sandwich. And it was just like, do you understand how this marketing thing works? And
No.
I want to put a finer point on the domestic box office performance of this movie. Because keep in mind, 1993, we didn't really look at the international numbers.
Mm.
It was all based on the domestic gross. This movie worse than Dennis the Menace.
Ooh. I've seen Dennis the Menace.
Yeah, with Walter Matthau as Mr. Wilson.
Yeah.
And
Christopher Lloyd is the villain.
yeah.
It wasn't a good movie.
No, it wasn't. But I also read that the week following its premiere, Sleepless in Seattle took the number 2 spot from it. Jurassic Park, nothing was going to happen with Jurassic Park.
No.
So that really is where they decided, oh God, what have we done when Sleepless in Seattle beat it the following week? And actually, I think Sleepless in Seattle came from the same studio. I think it was still Columbia.
Yeah, but that makes sense because it's definitely are you sick of your are you sick of your male significant other begging you to go into this dinosaur movie?
Again.
Here's Tom Hanks being delightful. Enjoy.
Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You remember them in Joe versus the Volcano.
And a popular at the time Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes.
To be fair, Last Action Hero, better than Dennis the Menace, not as good as Sleepless in Seattle.
I will say it also is better than the number 2 film of the summer, The Firm.
I've never seen The Firm.
Oh, it's a lot.
It's one of those Tom Clancy. No, not Tom Clancy.
No,
John Grisham.
John Grisham. Yeah. I've seen like one of his movies. It was all right.
It's the only book of his I've read.
No.
Was
I
The
think
Firm, because in 1992 everyone was reading The Firm, and I was too stupid to not understand that it's a bad book.
Yeah, and it was right before he started writing his books as suggestions for how to make the film version. I remember. I think it's The Chamber. The Chamber reads like a suggested script.
Yeah,
it's just terrible.
The only Grisham movie I've ever seen is The Client.
The Clients? Is it better than Yes, Kurt. It's better than
Yes.
Caddyshack 2.
Yes, I don't think any of the movies we cover this summer is going to be worse than Caddyshack 2.
Yeah. All right. I will say, because I've been going down a Riff Tracks rabbit hole, there are movies that are worse than Caddyshack 2 that have been featured on Riff Tracks. But we're talking stuff like Samurai Cop and Miami Connection.
Yeah.
And
Manos to Hands of Fate.
The Icebreaker.
But I watched one today, The Dark Power.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, you can honestly just subside with just the best of Riff Tracks on it. Essentially, it's a bunch of Southern hillbillies that are being attacked and slaughtered by voodoo zombies.
Of course they are.
So back to Last Action Hero. I'm going to give you my impression before we really get into this. I was kind of mentioning this to Mike. As as the person who saw this in the theater, I can pinpoint why it didn't resonate with people. The big thing was that it took great pains to spoof a genre that was still kind of chugging along at this point. I mean, it might as well have been released in 1989, with just the amount of stuff it's doing. But, and I liken this, I told Mike this comparison, it feels like the hair metal that was getting released in 1993. Like, all of these bands had run their course, and now they're like desperate, and they're really trying a lot of stuff, not understanding how irrelevant they're becoming. Meanwhile, Jurassic Park is Nevermind, and it's just Jurassic Park gave us a feast for the eyes. It was still probably in my top 5 greatest theater-going experiences, solely for the Brontosaurus reveal at the very beginning of the movie.
Mm.
I wish my kids could actually see that on the big screen.
Yeah.
And Last Action Hero, you know, now that we're almost 30 years out, looking at it, it's like you signed off on these special effects. There's a lot of animated special, like hand-drawn animated electrical special effects on there.
Yeah, for an $85 million budget, the special effects are not
15
good.
of which was Schwarzenegger, and I think he got a Humvee out of it.
Michael Caine got a house out of Jaws' Revenge, so.
True. So, Thomas, what do you like? Because you were the one who was so excited. It was like when we listed these out, you're like, "Oh, this is one of my favorites." Explain. No judgment. Just explain.
A little bit of judgment.
I
Well, maybe
was about to say,
cool.
I expect at least
middle.
a little bit.
I am firmly in the middle of this discussion. I'm not on either end of either being so in love with it or absolutely hating it. So I love my position right now. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
In this episode, Andy will be playing the role of Switzerland.
Yeah.
For me, this movie to me, and I feel like I've been saying this about a lot of movies lately, but this movie to me is ahead of its time. It is the pop culture smorgasbord extravaganza that we're used to now. You know, we've had all this Lego stuff. We've had Ready Player One. We're about to all wonder why A Clockwork Orange is making a cameo in Space Jam 2. There's all of these, and this movie was one of the first ones to do it. I think part of the issue with it, and I think why it worked for me as a kid, was I hadn't watched a lot of Commando, True Lies, Total Recall, Running Man. I hadn't watched a lot of his films. I watched none of Steven Seagal's films.
Good for you.
And you're a
better
man for
I
it.
was about to say it's because my parents loved me. And so for me, now when I watch the film, I go, wow, this is literally, it's that how do you make fun of something already ridiculous challenge. It's kind of like when they made that incredible Burt Wonderstone movie with Steve Carell and Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey is supposed to be the David Blaine or the Chris Angel, and you're just sitting there going, okay, well, they're already ridiculous and over the top and ludicrous. How do you make fun of something that's gone past the point of parody into idiocy already? And by the time this movie came out, that's where the action genre kind of was. So having Arnold Schwarzenegger riding a corpse into a tar pit, if you asked people which movie that was from, they would struggle. It wasn't something so ridiculous that you would go, oh, that had to have been in Last Action Hero. Had to be. You could sit there and be like, yeah, that could have been any of them. Maybe you'd be like, I have to know the ethnicity of the dead body to be for sure. And then once you And then you might be able to narrow the field down, but that's about it. So for me, because I hadn't been inundated, a lot of the craziness of the film was new to me, and therefore a lot of fun. I would hazard to argue at that time period, people weren't as broad in their pop culture. So to ask people that watched Schwarzenegger movies to get an Amadeus reference was a big ask. That's a very big ask.
The sole reason they cast F. Murray Abraham is is to remind everybody of a much better movie.
Yes, and to ask people that got that to go, hey, do you know that we're doing Fritz the Cat just without admitting it with Danny DeVito? To ask people to catch that, like it's a very big spectrum that these days wouldn't be an issue, but I think in the 90s was a big ask for people to catch all of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this movie kind of fails to do what Scream does so well. Scream is like still a solid action movie, a horror movie, but it knows enough to kind of poke fun at the genre while still making a solid movie. This one, it starts off by being like kind of a spoof of an action movie. Like when the kids like watch it, it's like, okay, yeah, the two guys are gonna be dead, and he's just gonna have a minor scratch, and then it happens. So that's a good spoof. But then it's like, all right, now let's take it all the way out into left field and like have a cartoon cat and a cop with bondage gear on and steam coming out of the lieutenant's ears. Like, why are you going so far? There's no need. You are already being a solid parody. Now you're just being a ridiculous, stupid parody.
I think that was there were two things about this movie that I do not. I solidly, after all this time, still do not like. One of the things is the crossing of genres of movies. I feel like the cartoon cat. It's like if he didn't appear in a Jack Slater movie, Bondage Cop starring Tommy Wiseau. Oh, hi, Kurt. It's like if the cartoon cat didn't show up in a Jack Slater movie, if the Bondage Cop didn't show up in a Jack Slater movie, if the T-1000 didn't show up,
if the black and
Jack
white
Slater movie, the premise itself of being able to walk into the movie doesn't make any sense. And I think that while it's kind of cute to see this, it undermines the overall conceit of the magic of the ticket, which, by the way, this is like one of those things where they make Hades just the devil in, I think we've had this conversation before. It's one of the things that drives me nuts, that they always portray Hades being the god of like evil. The same thing goes with Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini was an escape artist. He was not a magician.
Yeah, he never claimed. He actively decried magicians.
Right. I'm sure he also said something vaguely anti-Semitic too, but that was just his thing. But
plus, the actor who played the film projectionist there, he was born 4 years after Houdini died. So unless he was playing a much, much older character, there is no way that would have worked. I just switch it to Nikola Tesla, and it would have made sense. But whatever.
The other thing that drives me nuts with this movie is the inclusion of Danny. Mainly because, and this might just be something that at the time this movie was released, his sole purpose in the movie is to go, oh, you never run out of bullets. You'll always do this. It's just a flesh wound. And we, the audience, supposed to sit there after seeing all Commando and The Running Man and all the Schwartz and the Stallone stuff and all the Steven Seagal stuff and go, yeah, he's right. They do that. And it's like, that is his sole purpose in this movie. And it didn't change going on 28 years. of this, that his sole purpose is just there to point shit out to you. This is what happens in a movie. This is what happens. It's like an extreme version of what you mentioned, Mike, about Scream. Jamie Kennedy's character is just there to mention the trope and, drive into 4 tropes, not, and at Tom's point, action movies at this point have gotten so ridiculous that, yes, it was right for this style. It's just, I could have done it without a 12-year-old going, oh, by the way, oh, by the way, oh, by the way, oh, by the way.
I'm the comedic sidekick. I'm not going to survive. I'm going to ride down. I'm going to drive across the roof. I'm going to drop down, and nothing's going to happen to me.
Yep, psychic.
Yeah, I mean, these days when I see the character, I go, "Wow, you are a walking studio note. You are the answer to every single note of." Are people going to get this? Are people going to get this part? It'd be really good if we had a way to make sure people got this.
Yeah.
You want to know another walking studio note in this movie? The daughter. It's like, we don't have any female characters, so for this scene, let's have a daughter film. And then for this scene, let's have a daughter. And then we don't need her anymore. It's like, she shows up in the house. She screams a lot. She kicks some ass. And then she shows up in a later scene with a monster truck, and she is never mentioned any point other than that. She serves absolutely no point in this movie.
Arnie always has a pointless daughter character.
He does.
He always has a pointless daughter character. We just, whether it was in the original script because it's Shane Black, or whether it's because of the studio, we decided instead of having it be a minor, let's have it be a blonde bombshell that probably is a little too old to be his daughter.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned Shane Black, because I have a hard time believing this is a Shane Black written film because it didn't take place at Christmas.
They do mention that. Like right at the beginning, they mentioned it's something about I wish this was taking place at Christmas or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I wonder if Shane Black has anything to do with this movie.
And he did, yeah.
Yes, he did.
I would be curious to listen to a commentary from Shane Black recorded now when he can sit there and be like, okay, so yeah, this whole part, I didn't want this. They had me do it. I didn't want. I just imagine there's a lot of him just sitting there being like, oh God. And then he's got grown-up Austin O'Brien sitting in the room with him going, oh good, I'm here for exposition again, guys. Yay. Someone at the studio saw the Page Master and thought I was necessary, guys. Yay!
I just, the thing with this movie is that, removing myself from it and kind of taking myself out of when I had seen it, I liked this a lot better the second time. Watching it a couple weeks ago in preparation for this, I did genuinely enjoy it more, mainly because it's hard not to like Arnold Schwarzenegger. It really is. Out of all of the rocks out with your cocks out action heroes of that era, by the way, I'm copywriting that term. You can't hate Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No.
I mean, outside of some a couple of little things hither and dither within his own life, you really can't hate the man either. It's just he's fun to watch. He always looks like he's having a good time. I never feel, even something like Batman and Robin, I never once feel like he's doing it for the Humvee or for the paycheck or for the tank that he was given as payment.
Yeah.
I legitimately believe that when somebody approached him and said, hey, do you want to make a movie where you make fun of yourself and the movies that you're in? He probably got really excited and wanted to know more.
You can picture that face. The second you mentioned that, Thomas, I could just see him with that big, creepy, gap-toothed smile.
I'm just wondering how many times he was laughing when they were trying to film the scene where he saw the Terminator 2 poster with Sylvester Stallone.
I almost hope that they were like, just to see what would happen, they went, okay, we got the take. Hey Arnold, do you want to improvise some stuff? Do you want to go ahead and do a little improvising just to see what would come out of his mouth? I have to imagine that, but and that's the point because they have Stallone in there, you know, like Stallone, Seagal, even at the time Jean-Claude Van Damme, like those arguably those were the three other heavy hitters at the time. I don't see a single one of them being brought this concept and finding it funny.
No.
I think Stallone would just think it's stupid. Seagal and then Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme would both be offended that you don't take them seriously as actors and want.
I mean, the only one I could see maybe being okay with it would be maybe Sly. Because
I think
shot
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think though Sly got his shot to do his own Last Action Hero. It was the Expendables franchise.
Yeah.
Especially like the first one of those is actually okay. The second one is dog shit because it tries to be Last Action Hero because they made money on the first one with a limited amount of big action heroes. And now you're going to bring in your second one and you're going to get Bruce Willis and you're going to get Arnold Schwarzenegger and they're going to exchange lines. It'll be hilarious.
Yeah.
We'll have everyone do each other's catchphrases from other movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they also had Chuck Norris come in and talk, do the Chuck Norris joke, which fuck that guy because he actually sued those dudes. The dudes that brought him into prominence, he sued them and then manages to like steal this shit whenever he needs it.
And now is a rep for some multi-level marketing thing.
Oh yeah. It's almost like the irony just writes itself. It's just too sweet.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead,
no, I just have so many issues with like a lot of the logistic problems in this one. I mean, two of the biggest ones that stand out is this theater. This the last day it's open. He admits he's packing his stuff up and it's going to be torn down, and yet they managed to get a first run blockbuster movie the day before the premiere.
Thomas, you've got the experience with the movie theater. Explain this, how this works for us. I didn't even think about that. And yes, Mike, you're right. That makes no sense. Explain.
I have no explanation. It's one of those movie things where it's like if you want to enjoy Walking Dead, you first have to believe a guy can survive in a coma with no life support systems able to run in a hospital. It's that whole thing of if you want to sit here and say that you enjoy it, then you have to be willing to secede to that first moment. Otherwise, that first moment's going to kill the rest of it for you.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. In terms of just plot acceptance, you have to accept this happens or else you don't have a movie.
No.
And my second big logistic issue with this one is brand huge Hollywood premiere. Is it in Hollywood? No, it's in 1993's New York, where they have already shown is a rat-infested hellhole where someone can get killed and nobody cares. So let's have all the big Hollywood stars come right in the middle there. Let's not go to California. Let's not go to sunny Hollywood. No, let's
the movie is set.
Let's go into shithole New York City.
Yeah.
In the movie's defense, as someone who has lived in LA, the only difference was the fact that it was raining. That was it.
Yep.
When they do the Oscars, you see that beautiful Hollywood Boulevard and the El Capitan Theater right there, and then now the Dolby Theater that they're going into, and they're on the red carpet. Yeah, that's at least a month's work of scrubbing that entire block clean.
Oh, yeah, I've actually been there for a red carpet. I've seen it.
Yeah. Nice. So yeah, for me that it's like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
The producer of this franchise is cheap, which in the 80s and 90s, producers going on their like third to fifth sequel for an action franchise being cheap about it, not surprising.
Yeah. Well, the cocaine doesn't pay for itself, so it's
No.
and it was interesting too because I was kind of like mentioning to Mike too that in 1993, we're going to assume the movie was shot in 92, even if it takes place in 93.
Mm-hmm.
It was around 1994 when Giuliani cleaned up Times Square and cleaned up a lot of those areas in New York City. So it's like the timing couldn't have been better, even though I still think in a lot of movies they still make New York out to be like this hellhole wasteland of Escape from New York. Today, but you'll have a Wicked poster behind you, or
and of all the villains that Charles Dance could have pulled out, he goes with the one that's already been very well beaten by Slater. It's like, should we go with one that's like really strong and really powerful? Now let's go with the cheesy guy with the axe and the hoodie.
But it's Tom Noonan, and
yeah,
man, did that guy deserve more work than he got.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you need just tall, creepy dude with like miles of forehead, then absolutely, he's your man.
Yeah.
He's always been a favorite of mine because I always he brings everything to the role, even if it's not, and especially because a lot of people forget he is a Thomas Harris Lecter villain. He was the first. God, what was the name of the?
I'm trying to. The movie was Manhunter.
It was Manhunter.
I'm forgetting what the Red Dragon. What his? It's like Francis something.
Yeah, Francis Dollarhide was the character's name.
Francis Dollarhide, yes.
He had a nickname, just kind of like with Buffalo Bill.
He was the Red Dragon.
Dollarhide.
Yeah, Francis Dollarhide. But he went by another name. Maybe it was the Red Dragon.
Tooth Fairy.
Because he had the
Tooth Fairy.
That's it.
Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking of something more badass. Gentlemen,
can all serial killers in a franchise have nicknames based off of action stars trying to do kids movies?
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah.
We have this new terrible
like the work of Mr. Nanny again.
Yeah. We have to stop the pacifier.
Oh no, this looks like the work of Mr. Mom.
And then when it gets really desperate, guys, all we have left is stop or my mom will shoot. Is there a way we can shorten that?
You know who I feel the worst for in this movie is Mercedes Ruehl, because did we all forget she won an Oscar less than 2 years before this? Out of everybody in this movie, you mentioned Tom Noonan just needing more work. Mercedes Ruehl is just one of those actresses that never got her due after that Oscar.
And to be fair for her, her character is the only one that actually seems real and three-dimensional.
So a single mother worried about her son. Yes, that's all you need.
Yeah, she won the Oscar, and then a transition began in Hollywood for the kind of films that were coming out, and there was just they seemed to all decide they didn't have a place for her anymore. And yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw her in anything, she was like Frasier's girlfriend for 3 episodes or something on an episode of Frasier.
Tina Turner was also in this movie.
That's right. Tina Turner was in this movie. And honestly, it's one of the best lines in the entire movie is at the very beginning. Here's the lieutenant governor. Call me when the governor shows up.
Yeah.
Kind of a truthful line when you think about it, hindsight being everything.
It ages well.
It does. It honestly does. Better, honestly, than the Tina Turner cameo. Because I even looked at, why is Tina Turner in this movie?
This whole movie was just like, okay, have you ever worked with Schwarzenegger before? All right, you're in the movie.
Yep.
Yeah. But he because of who he was working with at the time, you could have the kid freak out because the T-1000 was leaving the police office, the police station, and the kid could freak out about it. I forget where she is exactly in the movie, but the kid could see Sharon Stone in there as her Basic Instinct character.
The same scene with Robert Patrick. They were both walking out of the movie.
Yeah.
The police station.
And again, but that kind of falls to the same thing I was talking about earlier. It's like, are they characters in the Jack Slater universe, or are they just here because we can make this joke that things come together, you know?
Well, and that's
like
where
all movies kind of come together.
Yeah, and that's where even just like 2 or 3 years would have made that joke work better in the realm of the cliches of the genre, because I think it was 95, we had the Maverick film with Mel Gibson, and we have the moment where he's dealing with the bank robber, and it's Donald Glover, and they even play the Lethal Weapon stinger. So you even had that kind of stuff happening in action films not this long after. It was almost like it had predicted a new trend, and now we see it, the Expendables, pretty much everywhere. If you can throw in cameos, references to other stuff, do it, go crazy with it.
Right. And and that's something I'm kind of happy the MCU has avoided, because you do realize we were all expecting that no shit Sherlock line to come up at some point in banter between Robert Downey Jr. and Benedict Cumberbatch.
They are much craftier with their cameos. With the best, my favorite one still being having the first actor to ever play live action Ant-Man in the first Ant-Man film.
Yes, Garrett Morris.
Yep, from SNL.
Yep, that was fun. It was quick. Don't belabor the point. Move on.
Yep.
Thank you. I have to say though, it just in the grand scheme of where this movie sits. First of all, I was thinking about, would it have been better suited to a different director? And I don't think I think you needed John McTiernan to direct this. I wish he was better at comedy. But you needed an action director to helm this. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts of a different director that might have made this work better?
I think the issue is not strictly about director. I think the issue at the end of the day is time period. Mm-hmm. I think if you were making this film in the late aughts or the 2010s, if you were making this film at those points with all the pop culture references and cameos, during that period of time, having a character play David Letterman and explain all the jokes to you was kind of what comedy was there for a while. Unfortunately, that sort of David Letterman approach. So the kid would have been kind of annoying, but it would have been the comedy of the time.
Right.
So I think the movie as a whole just needs to be run and operated by people that are in the action industry, but also can take a joke, which is why I think Shane Black was the right person to write the script. I
think Shane Black would have been good for directing it, actually. If they had gone more straight and like not had the whole going through the movie, is like that. Right. That for me is where it's like it's trying to do too many things. If it was just a straight action movie with like some parody elements to it, but you still had like a solid movie, then it could have worked. But by having this kid trying to, no, you look at that, that's a movie, this is a movie, this is a movie. It's just it starts becoming just more of a spoof than a parody. And I
kind of feel though like Shane Black is given writing credit, but there is a lot of interference in this movie. There was interference
Yes.
going through the release schedule of this movie. There was a lot of interference. Schwarzenegger voiced that. It's like we're opening a week after Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Can we push that back? And you know, to their end, yeah, it does cost more to delay a movie week by week by week by week that you do it, especially for the sheerly insane amount of money this movie cost at that time. And these numbers that we're talking about are 1993 numbers.
Yeah.
If you were to inflate those numbers today, they'd be insane. But I feel like Shane Black did what he could. There's tons of studio interference, like Thomas, like you said, with the note. It's like Danny is just nothing but a walking studio note.
Yeah.
But I will give this movie credit, though, in terms of another action comedy that came out the very next year, also starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, True Lies. This movie has aged a hell of a lot better than True Lies has. By leaps and bounds, I would rather watch this movie now than True Lies. 10 years ago, I might have said something differently, but my God, does Cameron need to let everybody know that he is in the middle of a divorce and he hates women?
True Lies is basically what would happen if you inceptioned into the minds of Fox and Friends. That is what True Lies is. Like it's like racism towards Muslims, it's sexism towards women, it's like all of that kind of stuff. The only difference is the only thing that lets you know it's not is that Tom Arnold's involved.
Yeah, and even with Tom Arnold, though, I mean, as the comedic sidekick, most of his jokes have to do with what a bitch his ex-wife is, and pretty much just, oh, here is violence that you can commit against this woman. So, it's. I hesitate to even think I want to watch the movie again, and it's just versus. I mean, with Last Action Hero, it's fun popcorn and fluff. At the end of the day, this isn't going to be my first This won't be it won't even be my first Schwarzenegger movie that I'd go to. I would go to The Running Man first. I'd go to Commando, which is honestly one of the most ridiculous movies I think I've ever laid out movie money for in my life. But they're fun for what they are. I enjoy Commando's on TV and it's uncut. I'll watch it. You know? But we also moved away. We were starting to move away with that in terms of action films. A lot of that has to do with the the Michael Crichton stuff. The Jurassic Park, Rising Sun outgrows this movie. Another Michael Crichton book. Wesley and Sean Connery.
Yeah, I think if the studio had been more aware of what was going on over at Universal, they would have been wise, honestly, to move this movie up to the week before. So that way all second weekend drop percentages could just be attributed. You could excuse it all to Jurassic Park and be like, no, none of the percentage drop has to do with the quality of whether or not our movie is good. It's all entirely because of Jurassic Park. And you could save a lot of face that way.
They could have. I think the major stopping point with that, based on the time that we always in the 90s looked at the summer movie season as starting on Memorial Day weekend. Jurassic Park had the Memorial Day weekend opening slot. It was the last week of May. This is your first summer movie. I mean, now, do we even have a summer movie season? It feels like we don't really, because we get Black Widow. We're getting Black Widow in June. But the Infinity Saga, those were April releases. They were supposed to be even early May releases. So the big summer tentpole is getting moved earlier than Memorial Day, whereas back then it was like, if it's before Memorial Day, still people in school, no one's starting to take vacations, no one's going to see this movie on that weekend. Then the other weekend's taken, and now we're going to get the weekend after. You know, how many times have people see dinosaurs? How good could those dinosaurs really look? Let's release it that week.
Yeah, I'd say these days, yeah, it's not about what major film is kicking things off. It's more, obviously this year not so much, but I'd say for the past, the 4 years before COVID hit, it was the summer started when you had that first weekend that had movies going up against each other. Because those first like 4 or 5 months of the year, there's one big release every weekend. That's it. There might be two like medium-sized releases that might compete with each other a little bit, but in terms of like the summer starts when you have your first two big movies going head to head and waiting to see which one comes out on top.
Right. And a lot of that is, how many tentpoles are really out there anymore? I mean, you get your Marvel movie, you'll get your Fast and Furious movie. You might get either the Pixar or the Disney release, depending on who drew what short straw for the summer and who gets the Christmas release. Other than that, there are no more Harry Potter movies. There are, every 4 or 5 years, you might see a Mission Impossible movie. And now we just have high concept stuff. We even like, instead of superhero movies, what do we have? I mean, Star Wars essentially moved itself to the winter. So it is a lot of high concept, but high budget, low expectation movies.
Yeah. You want movies that you spent a good amount of money on. If you can get a franchise out of them, that's great. But if not, put them out in the summer when people can be watching them all day long, all week long, without school in the way, to really bolster those box office numbers.
Yeah. And it
become the new strategy.
Definitely changed. The whole strategy has definitely changed now.
Yes.
For the time, this was every weekend. Every weekend I was at a movie in 1993, and all like outside of. Actually, I think just outside of Dennis the Menace, I might have seen all the top 10 highest grossing summer movies of 1993. I wasn't going to see Dennis the Menace. Come on. But I would go because I had expendable cash. I was, in between years of college, and I was just, what am I going to do?
I don't want to be completely down on this. There are some clever moments in this movie, like like the scene when they go to Slater's apartment. It's like Danny has never seen it, so they've never shown this apartment in any of the movies, and so when they go in, there's nothing there. They've never bothered to decorate his apartment because it's never been on the movie.
Right, and it's just all right. You'd love Dennis the Menace.
No, he wouldn't. No.
I don't like watching kids' movies with my kids now. I try to keep them edged up a little bit on those too. By the way, my son is obsessed with the Mitchells versus the Machines.
Still need to see it.
He's watched
I'm a little
it
behind.
5
I still haven't even
times.
watched Luca.
Oh, okay. Luca's excellent. I'm assuming, Mike, you haven't seen it either because you didn't say anything. My son has watched this movie 5 times, and if you're a Patreon subscriber to Verbal Diorama, I will actually list this out because it's her next movie she's talking about. In the year 2021, the year of our Lord 2021, there have been 3 movies or TV series which have been insisted upon me. Zack Snyder's Justice League, Invincible, and Mitchells versus the Machines. We've had our conversations about Zack Snyder's Justice League. Endgame, they try to turn Superman evil. With Invincible, they turned Superman evil. Fortunately, with Mitchells vs. Machines, they didn't do anything with Superman. But it was definitely, out of all of the movies that they talked about, it's the one that lived up to everybody's insistent hype.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if either of you have watched Invincible. I got it like plastered all over my Twitter timeline, and it's dull. It's just I don't see what other people see in it. Kind of like, people talk to me about The Boys, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll watch that eventually. I did, and I enjoyed it.
It was fine.
Thinking, yeah. Tom shaking his head. You didn't care for The Boys?
It's fine. I thought some of it was creative, but I don't know. It just in the long run, I started watching season 2 and realized just how repetitive it already was becoming because it was about the hooks. Whereas you get something like the animated Harley Quinn, where yes, it's got the hooks of the language and the violence and all that kind of stuff, but it's so much about how that stuff plays into what's going on with the characters. Whereas I think The Boys doesn't have that at all.
Yeah. That's understandable. And yeah, I think I would recommend Harley Quinn over The Boys. I'd actually recommend Harley Quinn over most anything that is suggested, unless you've got kids, and then Mitchell's vs. the Machines is a really good way to go. So overall, I mean, there are definitely things that you can question about this movie. There are things that you can actually genuinely enjoy this movie, and I feel like maybe age has softened me, but I had a good time watching it. You know, for what I went into, having laid out movie money, ate the popcorn, had the soda, watched the movie going, what in the hell is going on? To then, coming back to it, watching it on, I think it was Stars, and being like, okay, this is not bad. There have definitely been worse. There have been worse Schwarzenegger movies. There's been worse action movies. And there has certainly been worse parody movies. I'm looking at all the Screams past Scream 1 and any of those god-awful, insert genre movie.
Yep.
From the
outside of non-teen movie.
Right.
The Scary Movie 1 and 2 are really good.
Outside of another teen movie, which was way funnier than it had any right to be.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, Mike, what were you saying?
Scary Movie 1 and 2 are still funny. I don't care.
I enjoyed Scary Movie 1. I did not care for Scary Movie 2, but I think
2 had some laughs.
Okay. It's been 20 years since I watched it, but
yeah.
Tom, you were saying? Yeah.
Something.
All right. Something. It might have been profound. I don't know. I mean, it's out of there now.
Yeah, I do think if you made this, I mean, I feel confident that it'd be very easy to make a lot of tweaks and adjustments and updates to this film to make it something that Mike would want to watch in this day and age. Like, you could easily, with how much people know about the behind the scenes these days, to fix his first logistical issue, have the kid decide to watch one of the older movies in the franchise instead of the brand new one in the theater, and that's the one he goes into. And so now he's interfering because he knows what's going to happen. So now, instead of him being this exposition, all of a sudden he's literally a walking studio note, because he's saying all of this stuff that's represented. I mean, you could do little things like that, and a lot of the kind of comedy they do in the film lands better. I mean, the only issue with a movie like this these days is that you would cast, Dwayne Johnson, Ryan Reynolds, someone you knew could do comedy, and I think you would need someone that you weren't entirely positive. Like, we know he can do comedy, but having like a Liam Neeson as your lead for something like this it'd be fun, because it's not, going the Airplane way of having someone dramatic. I think the big interesting thing with this film is that in this day and age, if you're going to make it the way it is and not make it like the movie that's coming out, Free Guy, like something like that, I don't see a single studio touching this. I don't see a single studio wanting to make this film. Warner Brothers has forgotten what comedy is. Sony is kind of scared to point out their own flaws since they got leaked to the public. This is a little bit more of an edge than Disney would want to go for.
Right.
And the worst thing that Universal could do is acknowledge that their most successful, the only successful franchise that they have at this point is ridiculous, over the top, illogical hodgepodge.
And it's not Star Trek, so Paramount couldn't do it.
Yes.
Right. Well, even still, like their other large Paramount's other large, franchise is the Mission Impossible franchise, and those are too few and far between, and it's just, I don't know. I feel and the product placement. No, product placement is just, that's never going away. It has to. It honestly pays for a lot of the movie now.
Yep.
But I feel like the thing about trying to remake this movie now is that these bombastic actioners are a relic of the past. Mm-hmm. Just like Westerns, just like smart parody comedies, like An Airplane or Naked Gun. They are a relic from a bygone era. And we could attempt to make fun of them. The issue with that being is that it would just come off as, hello, fellow kids, and then show them this. So I don't know if you could well, I'll give the same argument about Blazing Saddles. You really, the number one reason why you couldn't make Blazing Saddles today is because no one will pay to see a Western.
I mean, we have shown that if you want to watch a Western where the N-word is thrown out for someone's enjoyment, people will go see it. Otherwise, Django Unchained would have failed miserably at the box office.
Yep, exactly.
It's just a matter of how you present it.
The Tarantino name brought a lot of that into there, I think.
Yeah,
well, yeah.
But it's the same. Well,
but I mean,
yep.
You tell me that Mel Brooks has another movie coming out, even if it's another one of those. Oh, we're taking a Broadway musical that he did and we're adapting it into a film version. Even if it's something like that, it's got Mel Brooks' name on it. I'm in the theater watching it.
Yeah. I paid movie money for the producers.
I do not regret that I paid money for the film version of The Producers. I regret that they picked a theater director instead of a film director to direct the movie.
Yep, that was.
But that's it. That's the only issue.
Yeah,
my only issue with the film.
Yeah, she was no. It felt like you were just the camera was held up like 3 rows back. And they made a couple of tweaks for Ula just to address that it's a movie and not a theater. Yeah. But, I really feel like you could not do this movie again. It had its shot, and had it been done like in the late 90s, it might have. I honestly, I think that if you had taken Last Action Hero, modernize it up enough, and put it where Wild Wild West was in 1999. There it becomes a hit because enough time has passed where we can kind of admit the sins of the past with these crazy action movies, still utilizing something that could be relevant and not so far gone where your kids are turning and go, really?
To be fair, though, unless you were a kid like me that was breaking their father's heart, you were going to movies like Wild Wild West or the Broderick Godzilla, looking at your parents and going, really? Really? You were watching the Cantina sequence in the special edition of Return of the Jedi, looking at your parents and going, really? Why?
Audiences wouldn't get it. It'd be like I Can't Dance thing from Genesis where people miss the joke. Very, very true. Thank you for bringing in that Genesis reference too, from around the same time frame. Good job, Kurt. I like that.
I mean, if we're doing final thoughts, then my final thought is I was expecting this movie to be absolutely wretched. I didn't find it absolutely wretched. I found it bad. and I did not enjoy most of the movie. But I did have moments of enjoyment, so I can't. I did say I can say it was better than I feared it would be.
Okay.
I do. As soon as that kid came into the movie, the entire plot line with the Italians and what's his name, that was completely pointless.
Oh,
that could have been
Quinn.
That could have been completely left out of the movie, and it would not have affected the movie at all.
Right. And what was up with Charles Dance breaking the fourth wall before he even used the damn ticket?
Who cares? Charles Dance.
I like Charles Dance a lot. I wish I wish he had better.
I'll fully admit this, and maybe this we can talk about this next summer for other would-be blockbusters that didn't do as well. I actually have a soft spot for Alien 3, and I thought he was fantastic in that movie.
Oh, I don't like Alien 3.
I have a soft spot for Alien 3 for multiple reasons. One of them being Dance, both in a great role and with one of the best surprises in the movie. Also, just because one of, if not the first guy killed off was one of my teachers in college. So,
that's really funny.
And actually, speaking of, we've been talking. He's in Jurassic Park as well. He's the guy at the computer at the beginning of the movie who's talking about like 5 more years and we won't have to dig anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
He was one of my teachers in college. Really nice guy, unless you pissed him off. He threw a chair at a kid once because the kid didn't know what This Is Spinal Tap was.
Well, they should have just given him tenure straight up right there. You know, you're in.
Yeah.
Never need to look for work again.
Expel the kid, give him tenure.
He should have made the kid have to tell him how much more black that cover could be.
20 pages. Let me know how much more black that album can be.
Yep.
All right. Well, we want to know, what are your thoughts on Last Action Hero? Are you a fan of this movie? Leave a polite comment below. Don't forget, share this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Give it a big thumbs up. All that fun stuff. Tom, tell us, where can we find Movies After Work?
Well, you can find us on Twitter at MoviesWork. It's usually me on there ranting and raving. So you can blame me and not Alex for most of what you read on there.
Most of it. Yeah.
And beyond that, if you want to listen to our show, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, many of the places that you find many of your other podcasts, including when these guys hop onto their podcast.
Awesome. Thank you. And you can follow Mike and I on same place you find Movies After Work, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also here doing the movie reviews. Follow us on social media, on Twitter at Geek Salad Radio and on Facebook at Geek Salad Podcast. So next week, are we doing one next week, Mike? Or are you away next week?
Well, I mean, if we can get it in Monday or Tuesday, we should be able to get it in.
All right.
Otherwise, I might have to see if I can do it from the West Coast.
Do it remotely, yes. So if we don't do it next week, we'll do it the following week. But we're going to continue on with our summer failures with John Carter, which, again, has this following. I've never seen it. I'm going to use this opportunity. Okay, there it is. And it's on Disney Plus, you said, Mike?
Yes, it is.
Even better. Great. So I will definitely check that one out. Tom, have you seen John Carter?
I've seen it. We've actually done an episode on Movies After Work about it. So
that's right. You did and M did.
Yes, we did them. Yeah, we did them close to the same time. Okay. So I think that was why we initially started talking was our discussion on John Carter.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense, because I caught the first time I listened to you was for Dracula when she was on your show. And then I went back in your archive and they're talking about Dune.
There you go.
Yeah. Yep. Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, October's going to be weird, man. So anyway.
And in the spirit of Last Action Hero, I'm going to take a drink from this delicious, lovely vitamin water.
Awesome. Well, Tom, thanks again for joining us. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned. We'll let you know when we are doing John Carter, be it next Monday or be it sometime in the future. But until next time, I'm Andy.
I'm Mike.
Go forth and be nerdful. We'll talk to you later.